I have a very interesting study here when it comes to isometric resistance training, and thankfully this is going to be the first article that we get to talk about resistance training with. Now, of course, if you haven't been around here since the beginning, I'm certified personal trainer, Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology, part of CSEP, the gold standard out there. When it comes to the personal training field, my exercise physiology degree was achieved many moons ago, and I keep up on this type of stuff, and it's nice to be able to talk about resistance training because it is my bread and butter at the end of the day. And there are 3 different types of resistance training that you can engage in. Concentric resistance training, which is what you'd most likely be familiar with, maybe not by name, but by repetition. So if you're doing a basic or dumbbell curl, that is a concentric movement because you are shortening the length of the muscle, and it is in fact the weakest of the 3 types of movements that you can do with your muscle, okay? Because you only can achieve, it's been a minute, about half of the actual strength that is within your muscle. That is just the most inefficient way of using said muscle, but it is how your body is unfortunately designed. Eccentric resistance training, which is of course opposite of concentric, so that means that it would be lengthening the muscles, so lowering things down. You always find that you have more strength when you just easily put stuff down. You have the ability to guide it down if your muscles are not being worked to fatigue. You have a little bit more strength there, and that is when you have the most amount of strength available to you. And then you have isometric resistance training, which is normally worked in with concentric training in order for you to give the additional pump to activate a little bit more of the muscle fibers that are there, that are available, that a reasonable trainer, somebody who is educating you on how to properly do resistance training, will tell you. If we're just going to go back and do the simple bicep curl once again, then you just flex at the top. That little flex at the top is the isometric part of the exercise. Now you can do that with everything else you do. And then it's just also good habit to get into so that you're just activating your muscles throughout the day. Like you can just flex your pecs, you could just flex your lats, tighten up your quads, do the little standing butt jiggle. Those are all little isometric exercises that you can do to just do something that'll stimulate blood flow. So then that obviously makes sense that isometric resistance training can safely lower blood pressure. That's great news. Something that was theorized for a while, but now it's been brought to light through proper scientific discovery. Let's take a look. Research has suggested that IRT, short for isometric resistance training, flexing between just you and I, may reduce systolic and diastolic blood pressure. However, concerns about the safety have stopped doctors from widely prescribing it. And concern stems from the fact that IRT can increase blood pressure during exercise. Here's just a little inside scoop. All resistance training, while you are engaging in the training itself, raises your blood pressure because it's pretty taxing on the system, Just letting you know. The concerns, especially when it involves large muscle groups or high in intensity. Exactly. Researchers from the University of New South Wales, who have a lot of spare time on their hands at the moment, recently led a new analysis of previously studied to explore the question of IRT's safety. The meta-analysis suggests that IRT can safely lower blood pressure and may even be safer than other forms of exercise for some people. Things that I've kind of known for a while, but okay, it's good that we have the studies here. The senior authority on the study, Dr. Matthew Jones, is an accredited exercise physiologist, one of my brothers, and lecturer at the School of Health Sciences, Faculty of Medicine and Health in UNSW. You hook a brother up, once Australia gets straightened out, wouldn't mind that speaking gig, sounds pretty nice. Dr. Jones explains, IRT is a time-efficient means of reducing blood pressure. Needing only 12 minutes a day, 2 to 3 days per week to produce effects we found in our review. Sweet. What is isometric resistance training? I gave you the brief overview, but here's how they describe it in the context of their study. IRT involves applying tensions to muscle without movement of the surrounding joints. Scientific explanation. For instance, a person contracts a muscle or muscle group and holds it in place for a specified period. Well, studies included in our review normally used a specialized hand grip device. Dr. Jones says it's possible we could see the same effects simply by asking participants to make a fist and squeeze at a certain intensity as a prescribed amount of time. This means IRT easily could be performed while participants are sitting down watching TV, something a reasonable personal trainer who's actually looking at creating a holistic approach for your entire life would be recommending at the same time, not just when you're sitting down watching TV. If you're at work, in the office, if you drive for a living, you can just flex your quads or flex your arms, flex your chest, just do things to stay active, even if you are in the confines of a cubicle or chair or wherever you find yourself. But I guess this is why he makes the big bucks, analyzing existing research. The researchers included 24 random control traits for their analysis, which involved 1,143 participants with an average of 56 years old. The total group, 56% were female. Okay. So all of them had some level of higher than normal blood pressure. Some of them weren't that terribly over range, but yes, some of them were in, the hypertensive category. So they got a decent mix of people. The effects of IRT on blood pressure. Here we get to the meat of things. We were interested on how IRT reduces blood pressure in people with high blood pressure. Thanks. We also wanted to know whether IRT is safe. We found that IRT is very safe. That's good. And caused meaningful changes in blood pressure, almost as much as you'd expect to see with blood pressuring lowering medications. That is always the goal. You never want to constantly stay attached to your pill bottle. That is something that you should always be working forward to. You don't want to be at the shackles. You don't want to be at the whims of big pharma. Because there is so much you can do on your own with just exercise and proper diet. Don't ever think that you're going to be shackled to any of those medications that are out there. Some diseases do require it, obviously. I'm not telling you that going out there and running 4 miles a day is going to cure cancer or anything like that. I wouldn't be that stupid to make those assumptions. I'm just saying, when it comes to a lot of things out there, you have a vast amount of resources, you have a vast amount of information that can get you healthier than you currently are. The researchers also found that aorta, or central blood pressure, an important indicator of cardiovascular disease, reduces by an average of 7.48 millimeter of mercury for SBP and systolic blood pressure, and 3.75 millimeters of mercury for diastolic blood pressure. Average systemic and diabolic blood pressure. Different takes on old words. Average diastolic blood pressure over 24 hours went down, although to a lesser degree, with a reduction of 2.39 millimeters of mercury. Still promising, obviously. We could go over some of the more geeky numbers, but this is a athletically focused channel, so we can leave the numbers for another time. If you'd like to read the rest of the study, obviously the link for this article will be in the description below, above, by the side. I don't know how YouTube's doing their stuff now. IRT may still have value for people unable to engage in aerobic exercise. Yeah, it's a great place to start. It's always a great place to start. Because again, if you're going to a personal trainer and you're brand new to exercise, okay, you haven't done anything athletic since middle school and gym became an elective in high school, okay? Body weight exercises are normally prescribed, okay? Even just doing a wall sit, guess what? That's an isometric exercise, okay? I've worked with people who were at that level, so I know that that's a responsible way of going about things. Now, you can start making it a little bit tougher from there, but if you're so out of shape that you can't even stand for a considerable amount of time, there are things you can do to work up to that. And isometric training is one way to accomplish that. It is particularly exciting for people who may have difficulty performing more traditional exercises, such as walking, cycling, or strength training, knowing they have another type of exercise in their toolkit to help manage their high blood pressure. In fact, there were actually lower rates of adverse effects in older adults, making it a very appealing mode of exercise, especially with those with mobility restrictions who may not be able to do other exercises like aerobic or dynamic resistance training. Yeah, because it's something you can do literally everywhere. And I'm not using that like a 14-year-old girl says literally everything. You can literally do it anywhere. Okay, I'm doing it right now. You can't see my legs, but they're flexing. It's dance time, okay? And it's something you can incorporate if you have a normal resistance training regimen. Like I said, just flex at the top. When you're done going through the full range of motion on whatever exercise you're doing, whatever muscle group you are training at that time, just flex it at the top and then just release it when you go down for the eccentric part of your left. And then, of course, in conclusion, what did they find with the isometric resistance training? The analysis found no serious adverse effects in the IRT trials. Out of the 24 included studies, there were only 7 reported adverse events, predominantly joint or muscle pain, which is nothing. A lot of people have a very, very, very low threshold for pain. So you get a little bit of lactic acid buildup for the first couple of lifts, especially if it's been years since they've done anything. It can be pretty painful. And even still today, there is some days that you're working a couple of new exercises and it doesn't matter if you haven't missed a training day in 8 years. I'd have to double check. I remember specifically what the day is, but whenever Black Sabbath's retirement tour went through, that was the last year I missed a single day. Not to brag or anything, but there's still some things I can do that'll just absolutely make my muscles hurt for the next few days, and always look forward to that because it's just always a little bit of an indication that, you know what, you can still improve, you can still get better, regardless of how diehard you are when it comes to strength training. Glad we finally got to work this into a video. It only took 2 weeks, but hey, we got around to it. More of this type of stuff to come because it's always interesting to learn the different methodologies that are out there when it comes to resistance training, when it just comes to exercise in general. I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.